In this video, I want to go through what I found to be the most interesting tidbits in the MD&A from Tenet Fintech Group from Q2. This was released towards the end of August in 2022. So the first bit I pulled out was their discussion about their Chinese operation. It certainly shrank a lot more in April, May than I had expected. So they talked about there being very little revenue in both April and May in China this past quarter. They did have a fairly good month of June and highlighted the little over $10 million that they got from the 6/18 quarter. All the revenue segments dropped except for they mentioned a 9.8% increase in the insurance business. It's the only thing that was up in the quarter. Now, one positive from the MD&A was even though they just managed to bring in $32.4 million in that little over a month, they still believe that they're on a revenue run rate to hit their revised 2022 guidance. So just to remind people, on May 30th, they updated this guidance, and this guidance now lists $210 million as the target for this year. So I wanted to look at how achievable that guidance is with these most recent numbers. So I wanted to take their revenue this quarter and kind of normalize it out, starting with a weekly run rate and then use that run rate to extrapolate out what a normal quarter without COVID would have looked like. So this quarter they brought in $32.4 million, and I want to strip out that 6/18 and not average that over the whole month because that wouldn't be appropriate. So I'll take out that 10.1 million right now, and that would have left 22.3 million that was earned this quarter in late May and June, again not counting the 6/18. So that 22.3 million, I'm assuming was earned, or guessing that it was earned over 6 weeks. That would be June and a couple weeks of May. And this is obviously a bit of a guess, but I think 5, 6, 7 would be in the right ballpark. So this comes out to a $3.7 million run rate per week for the weeks that they were running at a reasonable rate in China. So using that, I created a normalized quarter. So we have this 3.7 million per week. Again, not counting that 10 million that was stripped out from sort of a one-day-ish event, times 13 weeks in a quarter, and that comes out to roughly 48 million. So now I'm going to put back that 10 million that I took out. So a normalized quarter would have been 48 million plus sort of a one-time event. And we're looking at roughly 58 million is my guesstimate of what the quarter looked like. So if it was a normal quarter, it looked like Peak Fintech did reasonably well. So let's kind of project or guesstimate the year based on the normalized earnings and what things might look like in the future. So let's start with the revenue that's in the bank, 34.7 million and 32.4 million. Pulling down that adjusted Q2 is 58 million. So I wanted to put that in and have the visual. Q1 is normally a low quarter if you look over the past 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 years. So it's not shocking to see this big run rate or quarterly revenue increase, so 35 to 58. Weekly run rate, this was a $2.6 million per week rate in quarter one, their adjusted, so not their actual, but their adjusted was 4.5 million in the past quarter. So what it would take to hit their guidance is if they were able to slightly improve in quarter three, which I think is very doable, and then maybe a bit more of a challenge to increase that to 6 million in quarter four. That would get them there. This would give them 65 million, doing 5 million times 13 weeks, and 78 million. And this comes out to a little over 210. So very close to their guidance. So I think their guidance is still doable. That comment makes sense. This I have more confidence in. The 6 jump, we'll have to see. They talked about their business hub being open November 30th and having revenue. It was in their MD&A that they talked about having revenue from their Canadian operations, but I don't think it's going to be very much. So I think this 6 million per week just has to come from Canada. That only have 1 month or 4 weeks of Canadian business, and it'd be going through Christmas. So hopefully in 2023 we're going to see significant or at least some steady growth in their Canadian revenue side. So that's it for sort of my guesstimate for this year on revenue. If I had to make a guess, I'd probably say 195 to 205, slightly below guidance, but it's pretty hard to predict what the second half of the year will look like. A few other tidbits. They talked about their Canadian operations, and we got what I thought was a fairly interesting bit of information. They talked about spending a little over $5 million this quarter on Canadian expenses. So it gives us some idea of at least their Canadian cash burn. Now, if you go to their end of their MD&A, slightly concerning, it talked about having cash available of a little over $5 million. So at the current run rate, this is just 1 quarter of cash for their Canadian operations. I'd sort of always wondered how much money they had in Canada and how much money was in Asia. If you look at their financial statements under cash, it talks about them having 15 million. But that 15 million must be, I'm assuming 5 million in North America, Canada, and 10 million being in Asia or China. And the China money can't easily, they were able to bring some money from Asia back to Canada, but they even talk about in their risks, I'll show that slide at the end, that it's not a guarantee that they can always move money back easily. Last sort of key things, they talk about their business plan, and we're going to get some events coming up for sure. Tenet has officially submitted its application for security to be listed on a senior exchange in Canada, and will file a short-term prospectus within days of the Q2 financial statement. So that's happened. So that is now. So we should be getting information on this short form prospectus next week, hopefully, or certainly soon. They're going to continue to work on having their securities reinstated on the NASDAQ. Nothing new there, but they've been working on that for, I think it's almost a year now, at least 3 quarters, so no update there. I doubt we'll get anything on an update on the conference call on Monday. They probably would have put anything they've known into the MD&A. Not surprisingly, they'll be setting up a U.S. subsidiary in the U.S. In the coming year, 2 or 3 quarters. So kind of looking at their cash needs, they're talking about listing in both Canada, London, hopefully on the NASDAQ soon, and the short-term prospectus. So we're doing some guesstimates on the capital raise side. Their current market cap is about 200 million. This is about 100 million shares, and we're sitting at about $2 a share. So that's where the 200 million is coming from. And I'm guessing they probably want to raise 40 million. I believe this number was mentioned on a conference call before. So in order to do that at $2 a share, we're looking at 20 million shares. So that'd be a 20% dilution. And then I'm not factoring in the obviously discount that the bank would get. So we're probably looking at more than a 20% dilution coming forward in their prospectus. But this is just going to be unavoidable. They need money. They talk about in the risks that they do not generate enough cash from operations to be sustainable long term. Their MD&A talks about believing they have enough cash for 1 year. So that's pretty much the main bits that were talked about. Last, this is just their comment about not being a risk, is it's not a guarantee that they can bring money from their Chinese operations over to North America. They clearly need to raise money in North America, grow that business, and certainly, you can't even talk about cash flow positive when they're just starting to grow that business. So they'll be raising money probably for several years. What's really needed is the share price to get back, $5 to $10, and then they could raise 100 million or 80 million at not a crazy dilution like they're going to have to do right now. So hopefully these comments help you, maybe save you from reading the whole MD&A yourself, and give you a little bit of a preview of some of the topics that might show up on the conference call on Monday. I'll probably do another update video on Monday or Tuesday after the call.